Yeah, no, that's so true, and that sort of leads into actually my next question, because especially in a year like this where pretty much everyone and their mom knows who's going 1 and 2. After that, it's more of a mixed bag, and we've talked about this for a while, and we sort of think even like from the 3 to the 15 range, those players are sort of interchangeable. So we're wondering in a draft year like this, when the order is less certain, and obviously professional scouts are not just going to go by the list that they see or the hockey ranking prospect tools that are being put out there, but when players are essentially equally rated or seem to have an equal grading in terms of what you guys are looking for, what are the smaller, sort of more granular factors that you use to determine who ultimately gets ranked higher and then picked whenever your slot comes up?
Well, I think you touched on it a little bit already. The reason some teams have had luck with guys, even in the fifth mid-round guys, because they've gotten to know them better. They've gotten to be more confident that they know what they see, and then they make those decisions based on tons of information. And that's what you're talking about, I think, with those type of players. So for us, to go to the combine was pretty telling. We try and dig in there as deep as we can for 20, 25 minutes. But most of the time, the work that's done before the combine and what you're talking about with two players that may be very similar, rated similar, guys have given them similar numbers during the year. Sometimes it can come down to maybe you've spent a couple hours with a player and had dinner with him or met his family, and there's just something in your instincts that's telling you this person's going to succeed.
Right.
And when you compare that maybe to player B, where you get an opposite vibe to that, to say, I'm not sure whether this player's going to succeed. And if I had a choice between player A and player B, you listen to Brian Kilray and people that have talked and coached over 1,000 kids. Most coaches will tell you, I'm taking the higher character person no matter what.
Yeah.
So, and that's the stuff that, Jim Benning would be listening to quite carefully when he's sitting around or listening to us talk about players and names are on boards, because eventually they're going to end up in a room to make that final decision at 10 and 40 and whatever numbers throughout. And even those 3 picks in the 6, like the key is hitting on those late guys, as you guys, I'm sure.
That's where you clean up. That's what Jim says, right?
100%. And if you can grab a guy there that becomes a player, or even an undrafted guy that you invite, that's where you make the difference. So
yeah,
it's a bit of a long answer, but I think the character issue gets underestimated, and possibly the analytics gets a little underestimated. And if you can use the right amount of all of those pieces, why wouldn't you? And the character is the key part.
Beautiful. Oh, I love that for sure.
That's an interesting point, Chris, just because, from our perspective as, maybe an analyst or a fan's perspective or even the media, a lot of the time you don't get to see these kids outside of, the highlights on YouTube or the Hockey TV subscription that you have, right?
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And imagine if you went and you just watched, as we were joking about in our January meetings, if you just watch highlight videos on YouTube, what kid is going to put a highlight video together that isn't his absolute best stuff, right?
Of course.
Right? A year from now, you're going to have your highlight podcast, and it's going to be your best stuff. But
hopefully,
it'll be a short one. It'll be a short one.
You have to sort that out, and I think you guys are on the right track here. In that, imagine if you had a rule. I joke about it. Imagine if you had a rule: no dinner, no draft. If you didn't have dinner with someone, you didn't draft them. Would that change things? I think it probably would. So
it would.
Yeah. And it's pretty hard for fans to know behind the scene, who really did well, personality wise. But I guess one recent memory that kind of comes to mind is, not that I know Bo Horvat at all, but I remember how much his draft stock rose as the London Knights kind of went on that magical run where Horvat was a leader, and did he score the game, the championship goal?
Right. I think 6 seconds
he scored a pretty clutch goal. So people were kind of saying, this guy has great stats, but I mean, look at where he's look at how he's scoring them. Look at the character that it takes to come up clutch in those situations, and so far it looks like it's been a pretty good
Captain Bo
at 9th overall.
Hopefully this summer.
But then, if you rewind the tape and you think, okay, at the time, trading to get the 9th pick and having Corey Schneider leave to get New Jersey's pick in the year they were hosting the draft, to give up that pick and take Bo at the time, it's not as easy as people think. And I remember spending a lot of time talking about that, but just spend 30 seconds talking about Bo. What makes him a valuable person? It's the player, it's all the stuff he can do, but when you get to know the person, he grew up on a farm. His dad is they're good, salt of the earth, nice people, and he'll do the right thing in every situation. So there should be a way to evaluate that.
Do you have a Bo Horvat story, perhaps, of that 2013 draft?
I think
meeting his parents or the coaches.
Yeah, I think in meeting his mom and dad and meeting him before, but especially the way he handled himself right after. Like it was all about making sure that his little brother was looked after, and could he come up, and he stayed up in the suite, and like just the way you could tell he wanted his parents to enjoy it. Like right from the moment we actually knew we were taking him, and then right after we picked him, he just oozed this sincere humility and confidence. Like not that false modesty stuff you tend to see sometimes nowadays, and we won't get into that. It was more, I'm confident, I'm down to earth, I'm good, but I'm also humble, and that's going to serve him a long NHL career. And it's
yeah, and I think. I think that was one of the few cases where we kind of just saw like a fan base or a lot of people working with the team kind of call, what was he, like 19 years old, 20 years old when he made the league, and they were like, this guy's a leader already at that early age, which is, you don't see that very often. So I think that really does have to do with the character of the player, as we were talking about earlier.
And I think it's a safe guy to talk about. Obviously, it's a fun guy to talk about because he's a big part of the Canucks today, and he's come a long way since he played junior. But even when you go back there, you guys will probably like this, is the guy who mentioned in his interview that he wanted to be just like Bo Horvat, just won the Stanley Cup. Robert Thomas. He was his idol. Like he just in London, when we interviewed him, he's like, I just want to be like Bo Horvat. I'm playing in London, and I'm in the same city, and I asked Dale all the time what Bo did and what did Bo used to do, and it's worked out pretty good for Robert Thomas too. So Bo Horvat's one of the good ones for sure.